Returning home that morning after my betrayal felt like stepping into a distorted nightmare. The exhaustion I felt wasn't just from my reckless choices, but from the crushing realization that my life had changed irreversibly. The apartment Michael and I once shared, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt foreign and lifeless. It was no longer a home but an empty shell, devoid of the love and memories we had built together. His presence still lingered in my mind, but the physical traces of him were gone. The neatly hung clothes in the closet, the familiar scent that used to greet me, the toiletries in the bathroom, and the framed photographs capturing our happiest moments, all of it had vanished. I stood frozen in the doorway, clutching my bag as if it were the only thing tethering me to reality. I was desperately trying to hold on, but the weight of what I had done pressed down on me like an unbearable force. Writing this feels like confessing to an unforgivable sin. Perhaps it is. I know that anyone reading this will judge me, and I don't expect sympathy. I don't deserve it. The shame sits heavily on my shoulders, suffocating me, because I alone am responsible for destroying the life Michael and I had built together. And I accept that. My counselor, Dr. Sarah, suggested I put my thoughts into words, to confront my choices instead of burying them. So here I am, laying my soul bare in an attempt to understand where everything started to unravel. Michael and I had shared 3 beautiful years filled with love, laughter, and companionship. We were only days away from our wedding. The venue was booked, the floral arrangements finalized, and the guest list meticulously curated. Everything was moving at a dizzying pace, and somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I don't know if it was the pressure, the weight of expectations, or a deep-seated fear of commitment that led me to make the most devastating mistake of my life. During what should have been the happiest time, I betrayed him. Michael was unlike anyone I had ever known. He was my anchor in the chaos, the calm in my storm. He always knew how to steady me when I felt lost. I can still picture the first time we met, St. Patrick's Day, a crowded pub filled with laughter and the smell of spilled beer. Friends surrounded us, but somehow my attention locked onto him. He stood out, not wearing a hint of green. With a mischievous smile, he walked up to me, pulled out a small bag of candy, and said, "Here's your pot of gold, leprechaun." I laughed, a genuine, uninhibited laugh. And in that moment, something between us clicked. That was the beginning of an inseparable bond. Michael's kindness, his unwavering dependability, made me feel cherished in a way I had never known before. For the first time, I felt truly seen, flaws and all. But maybe, deep down, I never believed I deserved a love like his. Maybe that doubt was the seed of my downfall. As our wedding day drew closer, the pressure mounted. The endless planning, the tangled family dynamics, the need for perfection, it all became suffocating. And in the midst of it, I lost sight of what truly mattered, my relationship with Michael, with just days left before the wedding. Instead of feeling excitement, I felt trapped. An overwhelming dread took hold of me, something I couldn't explain or escape. Michael, on the other hand, remained unshaken. The stress of wedding planning never seemed to touch him. He was patient, steady, and understanding, even as I unraveled over the smallest details, like table settings and seating charts. His only requests were simple: no extravagant bachelor or bachelorette parties, and he wanted to wear a classic tuxedo. Everything else was up to me, but even those 2 small wishes felt like unbearable burdens. And instead of turning to Michael, instead of trusting him with my fears, I made the worst mistake of my life. I chose to keep my emotions locked away, convincing myself that I needed one final night of freedom before fully committing to marriage. It was a misguided attempt to relieve the pressure suffocating me, a reckless justification for what will become my greatest regret. That's when I made the impulsive decision to throw a bachelorette party, blatantly disregarding Michael's wishes. It was selfish, irresponsible, but in that moment, it felt like my only escape from the overwhelming weight of expectations. The evening started harmlessly enough. My friends and I headed to a bar, clinking glasses and reminiscing about old memories. But as the drinks kept flowing, the mood shifted, and the night spiraled into something far beyond innocent fun. After several rounds of shots, we found ourselves at a friend's apartment, where, unbeknownst to Michael, a stripper had been arranged. What was meant to be light-hearted entertainment quickly morphed into a blur of reckless decisions. I remember the way I laughed at his jokes, how I flirted with him without a second thought, feeling a rush of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. One moment bled into the next, and somehow I ended up in his bed. The details of that night became a hazy, fragmented dream, as though I were watching someone else make those choices, someone I no longer recognized. The brutal truth hit me the next morning like a crushing weight. My head pounded from the hangover, but the real pain came from the overwhelming realization of what I had done. In my dazed state, I instinctively reached out, expecting to find Michael beside me. Instead, my hand met emptiness, and dread coiled in my stomach like a tightening vice. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to gather my clothes, desperate to flee the scene of my betrayal. I wanted to believe it had all been a nightmare, that silence could somehow erase my actions. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had crossed a line that could never be undone. By the time I reached our home, a sense of foreboding gripped me long before I even stepped inside. The air was heavy, thick with an absence that made my chest tighten. The moment I entered, my worst fears were confirmed. Michael was gone. His clothes, his books, the framed photographs that once captured our happiest moments. Everything had disappeared. My heart pounded as I rushed from room to room, clinging to the hope that this was all some cruel misunderstanding. But every empty space only solidified the truth. On the kitchen counter, a single note awaited me. Just 2 words. Hope it was worth it. I stared at the message, my vision blurred by tears, my entire body trembling as if I had been physically struck. The grief was suffocating, unbearable, leaving me gasping for air as the reality of what I had done settled over me like a crushing weight. I refused to believe he was truly gone. Some desperate part of me clung to the hope that I could explain, that I could beg for forgiveness, that somehow I could fix this. But deep down I knew Michael had made his decision. My calls went unanswered. My messages never delivered. He had erased me from his life completely, blocking me from every platform, as if our love had never existed at all. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching the note as gut-wrenching sobs racked my body. The most precious part of my life was gone, and I had no one to blame but myself. There was no undoing what I had done. In the days that followed, I withdrew from everything. I shut myself away, barely eating, barely sleeping, sinking deeper into isolation. The world outside moved on, but I remained frozen in place, drowning in regret. Friends reached out, but I ignored them, too ashamed to face anyone. How could I explain my betrayal? How could I justify hurting the man who had once loved me unconditionally? Just days before, Michael and I had been planning our future, picking out wedding details, envisioning the life we would build together. And now, all I had left was regret. The events of that night played in an endless loop in my mind, each replay bringing a fresh wave of anguish, a desperate wish to turn back time. But no matter how much I longed for a second chance, I knew the truth. The damage was irreversible. As the weeks turned into months, I tried to rebuild the shattered pieces of my life, but the overwhelming guilt never faded. Every corner of our apartment, the half-empty closet, the bare walls where our pictures once hung, served as a brutal reminder of what I had lost. There was no escape from the consequences of my actions. Desperate for any connection to Michael, I reached out to his best friend, Chris, hoping for some clue about where he had gone. Maybe, just maybe, there was a sliver of hope left. But Chris's response was curt and final. Michael doesn't want contact. Stay away. In that moment, the weight of finality crushed me. Michael had moved on. He had erased me from his life, severing every last tie between us. There was nothing left to salvage. Eventually, I started therapy with Dr. Sarah. She urged me to write about my experiences, believing that putting my thoughts into words would help me process my emotions and uncover the deeper reasons behind my actions. At first, I resisted. Facing the truth felt unbearable. But over time, she helped me see that my betrayal wasn't just about one reckless night. It was part of a pattern, a cycle of self-sabotage I had been trapped in for years. Whenever happiness found me, I instinctively pushed it away. Deep down, I never believed I deserved something good, So I destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to me. I still don't fully understand why I acted so recklessly, why I let my fears dictate my choices. But I've made progress. 3 years have passed since Michael walked out of my life. I'm still learning to forgive myself. I may never completely succeed, but I've learned to live with the weight of my decisions. I no longer search for him. I've accepted that he's moved on, and I genuinely hope he's found the happiness he deserves. As for me, I continue moving forward, trying to grow, to learn, to understand myself better. It's a slow, difficult journey, but I'm committed to taking it one step at a time.